It started with a shadow, out near Jupiter's orbit. A telescope array caught flickers tiny points of shifting darkness where nothing should move. At first, the operators thought it was a glitch. Cosmic dust. Maybe solar interference? By the time they realized it was an entire fleet, it was already on its way. Coming fast. No demands. No transmission. No warning, just silence. Then the first ship broke orbit over the Pacific, sharp as a needle and the size of a stadium. It didn't bother with scans. Didn't ask who lived here. It just dropped a payload directly into the ocean like it was planting a flag. That's when most people realized this wasn't a visit. This was an invasion. The thing that landed walked out of the waves halfway between Hawaii and California. Looked like metal and bone fused together, as if someone built a nightmare using the wrong parts of a skeleton. People died on the beach without even understanding what they were looking at. Not from weapons, just from the sound it made. Some kind of frequency, way below human hearing, capable of rupturing organs and shattering glass from the inside. In minutes, all communication from the West Coast faded into static. The world hit panic. Military bases scrambled, jets launched everything they had into the sky. But the things, whatever they were, didn't act like any army Earth had ever seen. They didn't form ranks, didn't occupy cities, didn't even try to talk. They just started erasing small towns, power grids, satellite systems, highways and farmlands and rail lines. Entire parts of the planet went dark. But what terrified people wasn't the destruction. It was how little the invaders cared about the planet itself. They didn't act like they were conquering Earth. It was more like they were wiping it clean. Like they thought we were some sort of infection. One thing became clear quickly. These weren't the kinds of aliens anybody had imagined in movies or books. No glowing saucers, no peace or take me to your leader. No curiosity. They weren't here for negotiation. Which, strangely, might have been their first mistake. Because of all the planets in this sector, they picked the wrong one. They didn't know what Earth meant, didn't know that under our soft skin and breathable air, we were something else entirely. The kind of species that survived 6 mass extinctions, built civilizations on top of ruins, made weapons from sticks, then metal, then the power of the atom, crawled out of caves and reached the moon on sheer determination and caffeine, and the aliens came thinking we'd lay down just because they turned the lights off. At first, yeah, Earth took the hits. Government leaders vanished. Civil defenses crumbled. Cities fell silent. For a time, it genuinely looked like the end. But it's what happened next that the aliens hadn't calculated for. People didn't just run. They adapted, scattered groups began organizing underground. Not governments, not armies. Just regular people, farmers, engineers, scavengers, hunters, folks who had nothing left to lose and no one to tell them what to do anymore. They didn't have fancy ships or energy weapons. What they did have were centuries of war stories baked into their bones. Guerrilla tactics, scrap mechanics, vengeful minds. Every time the aliens wiped a town, something would blow up behind their lines. Every piece of alien tech they left behind became an experiment, a project, a weapon. And somewhere, in the ruins of what used to be Denver, a group of survivors managed to crash an enemy scout ship and crack part of its language system. What they found changed everything. These weren't invaders on a scouting mission. They hadn't come to Earth because of its resources, or to enslave the population, or even to conquer for glory. They were exterminators. The fleet had already bathed 14 other planets before this one, systematically cleaned and terraformed for their species to settle the problem. Earth wasn't on their list. According to their logs. Their target was Earth Ian, a dead, uninhabited dust rock in the Gliese system. Someone or something had set the coordinates wrong, and they'd arrived here assuming 0 resistance. 0 intelligence life. No defense. They thought we were pests. That's when it all shifted. See, to humans, the idea of aliens was always a mix of wonder and fear. But once we realized they didn't even see us, that they didn't think we were worth, acknowledging something snapped in the collective soul of what was left of humanity. for the first time in generations, everyone had the same enemy. No more borders. No nationalism. No petty fights over oil or politics. Just the simple fact that an entire species had come to wipe our home off the galactic map, and didn't even care enough to learn the damn name of the planet they were attacking. Earth. We taught our kids that word meant home, meant life. But in that moment, it meant something new. Something dangerous. It meant resistance. Deep in the remains of what had been a university lab, an old professor and a teenage coder began repurposing a broadcast tower into something else, a pulse jammer that could throw the invaders' communications into chaos. All they needed was a power source strong enough to fry every circuit within a 5-mile radius and somewhere in the Arctic, where the cold had hidden them from the alien scanners. A rogue unit of Marines, men and women thought dead after a missile strike, were crawling through frozen wreckage toward an alien command node. They had no backup. No orders, just the bitter wind and vengeance. Above, in the orbiting debris field where half our satellites used to be, the aliens launched a second wave to finish the job. But this time, the humans were ready. Not with ships, but with patience, knowledge, and fury. They'd forgotten to check the planet's name. They assumed Earth would be easy. But there was one thing the enemy had never faced before, not in all the galaxies they'd burned. Humans who knew they were already doomed, and fought anyway. Now, the sun was setting red across a shattered skyline. The air buzzed faintly with interference. Somewhere, in the silence after a distant explosion, a girl in torn sneakers held a rifle too big for her shoulders. She was breathing hard. On the ground beside her lay the remains of something that bled blue and smoked from places no creature should even have. She reached out, pressed a button on a salvaged wrist piece taken from the last alien soldier who tried to crawl away. It pulsed once. Then twice. She looked up at the sky as more ships descended like thunderheads, and smiled. They wouldn't misunderstand Earth again, but they were already too late, because buried beneath the rubble, wired into makeshift towers, hidden in forests and collapsed subway lines. Earth was coming online. Faster, smarter. Angry. And this time we were the ones launching a surprise. Somewhere deep inside the wreckage of a forgotten city once called Chicago, damp with old rain and covered in a skin of ash, a group of survivors walked single file through an abandoned subway tunnel. Their boots crunched glass with every step, echoes bouncing off the curved walls like fading whispers of a world that didn't exist anymore. The girl with the rifle, her name was never written down. People just called her Red, maybe because of her hair, maybe because of the blood she always seemed to come back with. She walked ahead of the others, leading them with nothing more than instinct and a strong dislike for sitting still. Behind her moved what was left of their team, an older woman who used to be an audio engineer, a quiet teenager who barely spoke but could rework broken alien tech like it was puzzles, a former paramedic haunted by the people he couldn't save when the hospitals went dark. There wasn't a soldier among them, not officially yet somehow. They had taken out 2 scout pods and a sonar tower in the last 5 days. Red raised a fist. Everyone froze. Overhead something hissed. Not steam. Not wind. Not anything natural. A low metallic scrape like giant claws brushing against steel. They waited, breath held sharp in their lungs. 1 minute. Then another dot and then just silence again. Keep moving, Red whispered without turning around. They're learning the tunnels. We don't have long. They had no strength left for fear. Fear had burned out weeks ago. What kept them going now was purpose, rough, stubborn, unfinished purpose. Maybe revenge too. Or maybe just survival, if that still meant something. The further they went, the warmer the air got. That was a bad sign. Alien drones had built underground nests the way termites, hollow out trees spreading in twisted halls and biometal corridors, unrolling through dams and bunkers and below what used to be neighborhoods. Wherever there was power or structure, they took it. Sometimes survivors would stumble into the wrong place. And sometimes, if they were very lucky, they only lost a limb. Red didn't believe in luck. She believed in planning, in timing, and in hitting first. At last, the tunnel split. One way led toward the surface toward fire. The other sloped down, dark and humming faintly with unnatural energy. "This is it," said the engineer, her voice barely a breath above the static hiss in the air. "Power source is 15 meters below that incline," said the kid, tapping at a handheld screen patched together from human wires and alien parts. "Looks like a central node. We jam it, we knock out surveillance for 6 blocks. 2 minutes tops before they notice," the medic added. "Longer than I like?" Red nodded. "We only need one. Let's move." They slipped silently into the incline. Every invasion has stages. First, shock and awe, then control, then assimilation. That's what humans thought looking back at all their own wars. But this wasn't like any human war. These invaders didn't occupy, didn't harvest, didn't send out messages or offer surrender. They weren't trying to win hearts or minds or destroy them, really. They were deleting us. Like we were an unwanted file. The mystery of it all stayed thick as smoke. Why Earth? Why now? Why hadn't they bothered to correct coordinates when they saw cities and oceans and satellites? Someone, somewhere out there in space, had made a mistake, and humans were paying for it. But a mistake goes both ways, because tucked in the ruins of Earth was something the aliens never could have predicted. Memory. Humans remembered everything. Old battle strategies. Forgotten military doctrines. Psychological warfare. Ancient resistance movements. Tricks from desert wars. Jungle conflicts. Urban ambush. And the more the aliens ignored them, the more human survivors rebuilt old knowledge, shared it. Passed it like stories told around dying fires. Someone found a way to rig pressure plates using torn-out elevator parts. Someone else figured how to overload alien batteries using magnets from broken hard drives. Groups formed in the dust. Networks of resistance, communicating through coded signals and underground wires. Avoiding anything wireless, they never called themselves a rebellion or an army, just Earth. That night, after the power node exploded from seismic charges planted by Red's team, the sky above what used to be Illinois turned blue for 2 full minutes. The energy wave crippled 3 drones, blinded an overseer, and knocked out an alien tower that had been scanning for humans across a 100-mile radius. It also fried Red's last communicator. Still, it was worth it, because every second of blackout was a second someone else had a chance to move forward. Out west, a man in a homemade pressurized bunker intercepted low-frequency transmissions the aliens didn't mean to send. They weren't just confused by human resistance, they were arguing. Civil war, maybe, or command breakdown. Something was scrambling the perfect kill code mentality of the swarm. The invaders had no backup protocols for failing an extermination. That same night, in a shattered mountain lab, a woman in a broken hazmat suit noticed something pulsing inside a shard of alien metal data. Raw, fragmented, but human-readable. With the help of 2 scavengers, she pulled out snapshots of astronavigation charts, Gliese system, star map logs. Proof that Earth wasn't the target planet. That we were never supposed to be deleted. That someone up there had hit the wrong button, or worse, deliberately changed the coordinates to send the swarm here. The idea spread like sparks in dry grass. What if it wasn't a mistake? What if it was sabotage? And if so, who was the real enemy? Every clue raised more questions. Someone had switched Earth for Earthian. But why? Had Earth done something wrong? Did some off-world peacekeeper decide humans were too dangerous? Or was this someone trying to hide sending a genocidal fleet toward an innocent world to cover their own tracks? No one knew for sure, and so far, no one had been able to speak to one of the invaders. They didn't talk, didn't leave prisoners. But bits of their tech recovered from crash sites or ripped from downed enemies started, showing patterns, writing, language. The kid with Red had translated part of it. And one word kept popping up, ***, purge, ***, not invade. Not terraform, just purge, like we were being removed, but for what? Red stood that morning on the edge of a collapsed rooftop, wrapped in a coat stolen from a long-dead pilot. Below her, alien soldiers moved slowly, scanning ruins for signs of life. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. Her friend, the engineer, nudged her. You've been watching them too long? They'll sense the heat. They aren't machines, Red said quietly. They react like people. I've seen fear in them, hesitation. You're seeing what you want. No. I'm seeing weakness. That was becoming clearer every mission, cracks in the walls. Poor response times. Drones failing to sync. Maybe they were damaged by the fight, or maybe they weren't built for resistance this stubborn. Maybe, just maybe, the whole species didn't know what to do when something didn't go according to script. Red looked up at the ships circling low clouds like buzzards. They made a mistake, she said. And we're gonna make sure this planet is the last one they forget to check. Machine or not, every destroyer had a code. And every code could be broken, especially by a species that figured out how to split the atom. Just 50 years after discovering radio, thousands of people were gone, yes. Cities erased, yes. But human history was full of fires. And every time, from every ash pit, something had crawled back. Not smarter, meaner, more relentless. Earth wasn't united in any official way. There was no flag, no anthem, just scattered souls hiding in the remains, teaching what they knew, weaponizing grief, turning knowledge into survival. Each fight added momentum, each fallen drone meant another piece to study, to reuse. Each small victory became a burning thread sewn into the larger story. The war wasn't over. Far from it, but Earth had stopped dying. And now? It had started something else. Something alien minds had not prepared for. Human vengeance. A cold wind swept the rooftop, stirring gray light across the rubble. Red adjusted her grip on the scavenged rifle. Far below, the invaders moved like they had forever to finish the job, but time was running out for them, because in a few hours, if the signal went through untouched, Earth's first hijacked satellite would be broadcasting a message across space. Not a cry for help. Warning. Planet Earth status resisting. Species hostile. Mood furious. But the signal hadn't launched yet. High above, in the hills of a ruined space observatory, 2 remaining power cells were draining fast. The broadcast tower hummed, then flickered. A cloaked shape stepped from the shadows behind it. Not human. Not fully alien. Something else entirely. Watching the antenna spark blue. And smiling. The cloaked figure moved with precision, every step calculated to avoid loose gravel and broken glass. Its feet bare, pale, not quite human, barely touched the ground. The observatory above wasn't just some random ruin. It had been chosen. A place once used to scan the heavens, now hijacked to send a signal the heavens didn't expect. The figure wasn't alone for long. A distant branch snapped, followed by a scratch of fabric against stone. From behind an old radar dish, a lean man in a soot-covered coat leaned out slowly. His rifle held low, but ready. He spotted the shape immediately. "Don't move," he called out. The figure turned. Not startled, the man stepped closer, careful of the uneven rocks beneath his boots. "I said don't move. I will shoot." The figure reached up and pulled the thin cloak away from its face. The man froze. Human, almost. Pale skin, jet black eyes. No whites. Hair shaved close. A jagged scar carved deep along the side of the neck, like something had once tried to take its head clean off. No fear in its face. "I'm not with them," it said calmly. Voice rasped like wind on sandpaper. "And I'm not here to stop your signal." "You expect me to believe that?" "It's the truth. You look like—" "I know what I look like," the thing interrupted. "That's the problem." The man kept the gun steady, though his hands trembled now. There was something ancient in the air. Something his instincts, not his thoughts, reacted to. "What are you?" The figure smiled. "A mistake." Then it nodded to the broadcast tower. "But maybe not the only one." 2 hours south? Buried under the cargo deck of a broken train, the kid with the modified datapad was stitching together lines of code and fragments of alien instructions. Like patching wounds, he sat half-crossed on the cold floor, surrounded by makeshift lights and bundles of salvaged wires. Each part around him had come from destroyed scout ships, harvested during dangerous runs and hauled back through ruined streets. Hard-earned pieces of a bigger puzzle. The datapad hummed a faint, throbbing tone, then spat out a living map. Not of Earth, but of the fleet. Real-time movement. Position logs. Timestamped decision records. They didn't just come here blindly. They'd been redirected mid-flight. The KID leaned halfway out of the wreck and called up to his partner, an older man with rough hands and a deep limp from a minesweeper. "Accident, you need to see this." The man limped over with a groan. "Another tech riddle?" "Worse. Somebody gave us away months before they ever showed up." The screen displayed a redirect command buried deep in the fleet's core memory. A command not from a system crash, but from something called Asterisk Observer Relay Number 17 Alpha, itself tagged as Human Contact Protocol Asterisk. The man squinted. "That site doesn't exist. Not on our maps. What does it mean?" The kid never blinked. Someone told them Earth was abandoned, cleared for purge. For a second, the cold seemed to press harder against their skin. If that was true, someone human had let them in, back at the observatory. The cloaked half-human figure sat beside what used to be a satellite uplink terminal, surrounded by tools and coils of wire. The man with the rifle still hadn't lowered it, but he hadn't fired either. "You're saying you're part of them?" The man asked. "I wasn't born by choice. I was grown, raised inside one of their biodens. But you're speaking to me, acting like us. I wasn't meant to survive." The figure tapped the side of its head. "In their language, my ID is Anomaly 42, but I remember names. I remember music. I remember what pain feels like. That's not part of their impulse coding. So what made you different?" "I listened." The man narrowed his eyes but didn't argue. The figure went on. "They receive data in waves, not thoughts. Just input and response. But me, I saw the night sky and wondered what it meant. That was enough to mark me defective. Why come here?" "I don't want your war to fail." The man snorted. "You expect me to trust you because you speak nice?" "No," it said calmly. "You should trust me because your message won't make it without what I carry." "What?" The figure reached beneath its cloak and pulled out a glowing fragment of alien core crystal. The man finally lowered the weapon, half a world away. In a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of an old air base in Eastern Europe, a group of quiet survivors gathered around an object none of them understood but couldn't stop staring at. It pulsed with light even when disconnected, an alien interface, circular and soft like folded liquid metal. Recovered from the chest cavity of a downed command drone, the man who had claimed it was ex-military, though no one could verify that now. Everyone was ex-something. Doctors, workers, hackers, artists, but mostly just people who'd lost more than they could explain. "This thing is alive," the man said, holding a makeshift sensor over the interface. "Not just artificial. It's got elastic memory. Emotion storage." "Sorry, what?" He turned the scanner to show them waveform spikes. It felt something before it died. Drones aren't supposed to. But this one was scared? A heavy silence filled the room. Across Earth, similar pockets of truth were bleeding into the resistance. Reports of drones hesitating, retreating, failing to act after sudden distractions. One group even tracked a pod that circled the same crater 12 times without explanation. It was as if something in them had started breaking down, something deeper than circuits, or worse, something waking up, but there was still no way to know why or how. And the extermination did not stop. Cities continued to burn. Forests turned to black glass. Skies filled with more ships, heavier types. Ground burrowers and flyers began working together, raking empty towns like they were hunting ghosts. Earth answered with guerrilla strikes. EMP traps, javelin launchers stripped from tanks, and suicidal missions that flattened alien hovercraft with spiked vans strapped to old jet fuel. And still, Earth was losing, but slower now, just slow enough to buy time. In silence, rumors began to spread. An off-world listening post. A hidden lunar base. Maps suggesting purged planets weren't always empty. And at the center of it, The thin thread of betrayal that someone, somewhere up high, decided the galaxy would be better without Earth. In it, the broadcast the Resistance was preparing wasn't just meant to rally survivors. It was a bullet aimed at whatever hornet's nest sent this swarm in motion. It said, "We know what you did, and we're not done yet." Inside the observatory, in the last hour before the transmission window opened, the man asked the hybrid figure just one more question. "Why help us?" It didn't answer right away. Just stared out across the mountains, where alien ships bled light into the low clouds like slow lightning dot. Then finally, it said, "Because I don't remember my mother's face, but I remember a planet spinning below a night sky. And the word I heard, Earth, felt like something too real to forget." For a moment, the moment before everything cracked, they just sat there together. Human and half something else. Cold wind whistling through hollow towers. Messages waiting to be sent, but the broadcast hadn't gone out yet, and halfway around the world, deep under what remained of a jungle outpost, something stirred beneath reinforced metal, a signal pinged from space. Not from orbit, from beyond. Far beyond, a single word pulsed into a dormant alien node without warning. Asterisk, asterisk, recall, Earth flagged. Freeze protocol under review. Asterisk, asterisk, and above Earth in the black stretch of nothing between planets, a second fleet began to stir. The first sign wasn't a ship. It was silence. Total shutdown. Half the drones stopped midair like they'd forgotten gravity. Others froze mid-stride, mid-path, mid-fire. One had been targeting a water tank in a scorched desert commune and just powered off, inch from the trigger. Survivors pulled it apart, one scared breath at a time, expecting an explosion. None came. Inside was a glitch loop, something that shouldn't exist in a system that claimed not to crash. When the anomaly spread to 3 sectors within an hour, it wasn't the Resistance that panicked. It was the swarm. The second fleet was coming, bigger, colder, and still weeks out. But the old fleet, this first wave swarm of unfeeling exterminators, was unraveling from the inside. Earth hadn't defeated them. Not yet. But they'd been grinding them for long enough to cause decay, like termites in a machine older than expected. And finally, something was watching in the observatory. The cloaked hybrid figure leaned over the half-burned terminal. Wires looped around its arms, the crystal pulsing dimly at its waist. The signal window was nearly open. Timing had to be exact. The tower was barely stable. Batteries swapped out from scavenged vehicles were holding just enough charge to light one more pulse. Behind him, the man with the rifle tapped nervously at a ruined wind gauge that rattled in strong wind. "How long?" 4 minutes. "You think they're listening up there?" They already were. Across the mountains, in an old weather station repurposed into a Resistance command post, a dozen shaky hands pressed old headphone speakers tight to their skulls, listening for lost voices. A burst of static rolled in, then something strange. Not a distress signal. Not a call for help. A warning tone, repeating, fragmented, broken into human-sounding pieces. A voice saying numbers in a pattern. Then 4 words stood out in English. Asterisk, asterisk, position mismatch. Host anomaly. Asterisk, asterisk, one tech collapsed the headset slowly onto the desk. Others stared in silence. No one asked what it meant. They all knew what it suggested. The swarm hadn't decided Earth was a mistake. They'd been told it was uninhabited, but now the fleet was questioning itself, and questioning was dangerous. Meanwhile, back in the tunnels under the shell of old Denver, Red and her squad approached what had become the main alien relay tower across Sector East. The tower was nearly 1,200 feet tall, shaped like bone and folded steel, rising above collapsing suburb blocks and melted streets. It churned in pulses, alive and rhythmic like it breathed electricity. This was the last one. The last piece of their plan. Red crouched behind a burned-out truck, watching the flicker of guards in oil-slick armor moving around the tower's base. They moved slower than before. Less certainty in their steps. Patterns slightly off. "They're out of sync," said the kid beside her. who'd long scrubbed the tech paint off his hands but still thought like a machine. Still armed? Very, how bad's the perimeter scan? Worse than last time. But it hasn't updated its coordinates in almost 8 hours. They're blind, but paranoid. Red pulled off her scavenged helmet and let the dry air settle on her skin. All they had to do was get a disruptive field generator inside the main route hub just long enough for the uplink to collapse. Not explode, collapse. Because if they blew it up, the second fleet would come faster. No. Disruption would make it look like a system failure. A data loss. A misfire, guesswork, like the extermination effort had just fallen apart. If Earth could plant enough of those doubts, sow enough static, maybe the superiors behind all this would hesitate, and that delay could mean everything. Branches of resistance across the globe were all playing their pieces at the same time, coordinated as best they could through shortwave bursts and encoded data couriers. They couldn't count on central command or satellites. Only people, guts, old tricks from spy playbooks written before most of them were born. Go time in 7. Red whispered, checking her watch made from the hollowed base of a drone lens. We move quiet, we move fast, and we do not stop. As night fell over the twisted city, Earth exhaled. Not in peace, but in preparation. In the north, above what used to be Scandinavia, an old satellite dish nearly 50 years offline lit up for the first time. Someone had hijacked it with an alien frequency generator, forcing the array to point at the sky. The signal it beamed wasn't human. It was asterisk. There's asterisk, mimicked, reconstructed, sent up like a mirror held to the swarm, return codes. Self-report diagnostics. Error statements. If the fleet looked too closely, too fast, it would see flaws stitched across its command fabric. And flaws are dangerous to entities built on the illusion of perfection. 3 levels beneath, the dead reactor of a former ocean rig. 2 engineers finally connected a power loop that pulsed energy through a flooded supercapacitor wall. It lit an entire underground colony for the first time in weeks. A small girl clapped. Not because of the light, they now had enough power to mimic a mining signal, one that told the swarm this sector was stripped and done. Fake data. Spoof logs. A planetary lie fed directly into the system telling the exterminators it had already won. Earth wasn't surviving through force. It was winning by rewriting the script the war was built on. Meanwhile, back at the observatory, the crystal in the hybrid's hand sparked brighter. It's starting, it whispered. The sky cracked open in a soft, low tone inaudible to normal ears but heavy in the bones. A pressure rising. The man by the console clenched his fists. You sure they'll hear it? They can't unhear it, but what if it backfires? The hybrid looked at him. Then Earth becomes legend. Mid-sentence, static blew through the radio panel. All around the tower, instruments spiked. The pulse began broadcasting. The message wasn't long. Just coordinates. Loss ratios. Evidence of failure. And 2 final words embedded inside the stream. Asterisk, asterisk, resistance confirmed. Asterisk, asterisk, the hybrid pressed its palm to the panel beside him, searing flesh against warm alloy. A final charge triggered. The signal was away. Somewhere above Jupiter, the second fleet slowed, not stopped. But slowed, relays flickered. Course adjustments hesitated. For the first time, another fleet, not exterminator, not scout, shifted in response. Unknown designation. Unknown origin. The cloak of certainty around the invasion fractured. On Earth, the swarm reacted violently. Cities trembled. Drones screamed and looped erratically through air they once navigated with mechanical grace. One ripped its own comms relay apart before collapsing into a quiet pile of metal foam. The relay tower in Denver glowed. Then pulsed, failing. Red and her team moved through it like ghosts, placing the disruption field deep under its core. The moment the last node activated, every screen in the area went dark. The tower didn't fall. It simply shivered and went quiet. That silence spread. 1 tower. Then 8. Then 93. And suddenly, Earth was noiseless in the data sea the exterminators relied on. Someone in the second fleet shivered too. Looking at same old coordinates, reappearing with new flags. Asterisk split signals. Human deviation. System compromised. Asterisk the last thing transmitted by the broken fleet's relay was a string of untranslatable data, patterns in a looped, nonsensical phrase. Asterisk asterisk, planet mismatch. Error, species adaptive. Asterisk asterisk in the observatory, as the tower buzzed itself out, the hybrid slumped back with pale breath. You did it, the man said. No, it whispered. We did? Lightning cracked far in the east. Everyone across the world waited, breathing shallow. Silent, because the most dangerous part wasn't over. It was just beginning, the fleet above. Earth had gone off script, and behind them, something bigger was finally watching. The sky didn't explode. For the first time in months, the clouds over Earth stayed steady, quiet. They didn't burn from incoming strike waves or scorch with engine trails. No new warships pierced the atmosphere. Just silence, and then withdrawal across the ruined streets of broken cities. Those few brave enough to climb to rooftops stared up in disbelief. One by one, the giant ships that had hovered for so long and cast endless shadows across every inch of hope began to move. Not closer. Away. Retreating. At first, nobody believed it. People froze, waiting for some trick, some terrible counter-strike. The old towers still stood. The drones still patrolled corners. But by mid-afternoon, entire sectors had lost swarm presence. Ships lifted without firing. Drones powered down completely. Some even left behind their equipment, as if the swarm genuinely saw no reason to retrieve the tools they'd once used to wipe out civilization. In the canyon lab, where the signal originally went out, the hybrid no longer sat upright. It was still breathing barely. The man with the rifle knelt beside him, hand resting gently on its shoulder. They heard? He asked. The hybrid blinked once, slow and warm. They heard, it whispered. And they doubted. Out at sea, where once black monoliths had risen from beneath the Pacific Trench, geysers of water marked the slow disappearance of the submerged ships. Inside network hubs rebuilt by surviving tech crews, all remaining alien frequencies dropped to static. No orders, no new missions. No extermination directives. Earth had been flagged. Not erased. Not claimed, marked as unworthy of extermination. Red stood in what used to be the plaza of a school, her stolen rifle slung loosely over her shoulder. Around her, small lights flickered on across the Resistance camp salvage solar panels patched together, just well enough to power lamps. The kid with the datapad approached, holding the screen out gently. I tracked their jump, he said. Core navigation relay went cold about an hour ago. That's it. They're gone. She didn't respond right away, just stared out past broken walls and burned cars toward the horizon where, for the first time, nothing was falling from the sky. Gone. The swarm had retreated. Not in fear, but in uncertainty. In all the records recovered from the alien fleet's archives, one note stood out repeated in irregular intervals. By what was assumed to be their central logic system, ***, encountered resistance outside of predicted spectrum. Target species is not compliant. Termination efficiency compromised. Recommend flag as volatile anomaly. Disengage pending reevaluation. ***, it wasn't victory the way humans might have defined it. No surrender. No clean win. Most cities were still rubble. Forests burned to skeletons. The oceans poisoned from sunken wreckage. But Earth still lived. And sometimes survival was the win. In the following weeks, small things changed. The underground comms network, once stitched together between bunkers, cellar offices, and old radio towers, began to function again, this time to reconnect rather than warn. Survivors began registering each other, sharing knowledge, locations of clean water, maps of where plants still grew, where med supplies could be traded. The Resistance morphed into something else, not soldiers anymore, just people again. There were ceremonies, graves, silence where silence was needed. Some stood in shoes that no longer fit, next to graves with no names. But when they looked up, it was into a sky clear of metalin that meant something, The engineers who had once rigged jammers and signal cloaks began reworking old grids. Towns that hadn't spoken in months reconnected through homemade relays. Cities glowed at night, not bright, but enough. Enough to remind people they hadn't been erased, back in the Tundra station where the strange satellite first flared up with the alien signal. Another message came. Through short, faint, not aggressive, pattern.mathematical.curious.not. From the fleet, but from something else entirely, the scientists, those few who had survived. Underground couldn't make sense of it all. But they understood the frequency was stable, calm. Watching. It was followed by another signal. This one human-made, once sent to deep space decades ago, the classic greeting from Voyager, replayed back. Altered slightly, acknowledged that was the moment everything became clear, at least to those who had been searching for it. The extermination fleet hadn't been the galaxy. It had been a tool, and the galaxy ... The rest of it ... had only just noticed Earth, whether that was good or bad. No one could answer yet, but it meant Earth wasn't alone. Somewhere, behind the swarm logic that coldly marked our planet as a mismatch, was something with the capacity for curiosity, maybe even remorse. Some inner council or governing intelligence had seen the conflict, the stubborn fire of a half-shattered planet that simply refused to go down, and hesitated. The hybrid was buried in the hills not far from the tower where the pulse had been sent. It didn't survive past that night. Didn't ask for any name. It had been human enough to care, but alien enough to know it never truly belonged here. Still, it had given Earth one last edge. A chance. Someone carved a piece of its fallen crystal core into a low stone marker. It glowed faint blue in moonlight. Right next to it, someone scratched the words, ****, you were something real. ***, across the world. Scattered survivors began organizing not around old flags or fading governments, but around ideas. Repair, grow, remember. Civilization wouldn't return as it once was. But pieces of it would. Libraries still held language. Machines still knew how to run. People didn't forget everything. And those who did learned, read, long past fighter, and always something more, stepped back from combat for the first time, helped plant trees in ashes, built walls not from metal, but stone and human hands. The kid with the datapad became a mapper, traveled between outposts, rebuilding old GPS networks linked through scavenged satellites. Not all of them worked, but enough did. One touched a ping that returned a wave signal slow. Uncertain, but definitely not from Earth. Hope. What came after was not peace, but rebuilding. People still argued, still made mistakes, but they never reformed armies. Not like the old days. They remembered too well what brought everything down. By the first winter after the departure, a worldwide signal had been restored. One every survivor knew by heart, not because it boasted strength or dominance, but because it had reminded the galaxy of something they'd forgotten about this tiny blue planet, that humans adapt, that humans resist, that survival isn't just biological, it's spiritual. The signal only carried one image now, a black and white frame stitched from recovered satellite data, a ruined Earth beneath stars. And beneath it, 3 words, ***, we are here. ***, so when the next visitors came, whether years or light cycles later, they would not find a world flattened and silent. They would find a people with cracked hands and stubborn eyes, a mended sky, a voice coming back stronger than before. Earth hadn't just survived. It earned its place. And this time. Would remember the name of the planet before getting too close.